Jan Vink de kwaadste niet.
Jan Vink de kwaadste niet. But where did he come from? He came from these two people. Lydia Jacoba Vredenburg, born in 1900, and John Vink de Kwaadste, born in 1895. What? Two people named John Vink de Kwaadste? What are the chances? Jan was born in 1941 and joined a large family. There was Ali, born in 1921. Clausine, born in 1923. Leendert, born in 1925. Lydia, born in 1928. Laney, born in 1930. Wim, born in 1932. Stella, born in 1934. Albert, born in 1935. Ari, born in 1937. Yauka, born in 1943. Jack, born in 1945. Where in the world was John Vink de Kwaadste born? He was born in this country over here called the Netherlands. But where in the Netherlands? Over here, on this street, in a city called Haarlem.
En I was grown up as a child here on the Gijzenkade, 287, 287. This is where I grew up. The house over there you see behind me. My bedroom was up top. You see the statue there, and right above there is in the third floor was my bedroom. So there's no window. You can't see the window, but right under the roof, like in the attic.
Which of your brothers and sisters did you actually live with in that house?
That was Ko, Jouke, and then me, and Ari, Albert, and that's it. Okay, everybody has a statue. This is a Roman Catholic neighborhood. They got a big church to the other side there. You can see a little bit of the roof there. And every house got a little statue on it, and with the name of some of these priests, I guess, whatever they were in the older days. And ours was St. Joris. And then little bridge over there, as you can see, was a little bridge. We call it the Chicken Bridge. That's what it's called in those days. And you walk over there, and there was a big park on the other side. So we used to play here. This here, beautiful grass, nice trees and everything. And we were not allowed to play or even walk on the grass. And if I look at it today, it's a pretty shame that it's the way it has turned out now. You wouldn't see any car standing on the street here. Nobody had a car, so it was just empty. Now you see it's just pretty tough to get a parking spot. You have even extra parking spots on the end of the line there. If you look to the right here, we had a farm there, and there was a horse and a buggy, and he goes from house to house and pick up all your leftover veggies and meat and all that. And he picks it up and he takes it to the different farmers for feed the cows and the horses. So he was there, and we as child were taking the horse, which is a big, huge horse, and we were only 10, 12 years old, with a big chain on it, and we put the chain over our shoulder, and the big horse is walking behind us, go over the Chicken Bridge, go all the way over there, and there's a big field, and there was a big pin on the end of the chain, and we knocked it in the ground, and the horse stayed there to feed himself. And still today, I don't know, I can't believe we did that because it was pretty scary. And that's what we used to do.
He was a nice baby, but in the night he was crying. And the neighbor, he said to my father, "You must stop, you're a baby. in the night, I cannot sleep from him. So loud, this scream. So hard scream, yes.
Oh, when I was, I think, 4 years old, I was right after the war, and all the soldiers were walking down the street, and they were all called Canadians. So from there on, every time I saw a soldier, he was Dutch or whatever he was, I called him Canadian. That was in the old days, in the first days of my life. Of course, I was a baby. The only things I will remember is that we each had a loaf of bread, and that's for the week, and a little bit of butter for the week, and you had your own. Your loaf is finished, that's it, nobody else gets it. You have your own. So you have to be very careful eating it all week. And that's one of the things I remember. Of course, you know, I was very young, so I don't remember too much. I remember when the Canadians came over in Haarlem, in Holland, and I called everybody soldiers. You know, the soldiers came in, and you know, it was really great. You know, and we had the tanks come in. I remember people telling me that we had the big tanks coming in, and if they stand still, they would be sinking slowly down into the ground. So they had to keep moving, so they wouldn't, because they were so heavy. And we have our dirt, our is all made out of sand. It's all sand wherever you go in Holland. So there wasn't no solid base. So when they go out, they had to keep moving, and that's the things I remember.
It's a far cry from what the same spots were like 70 years ago. The Germans had leveled the cities, murdered those who got in the way. The Dutch who were left were starving after the 5 years of brutal Nazi occupation. By 1945, they were so hungry, some were eating tulip bulbs to stay alive.
The starved, rickets-ridden bodies of this Dutch family are witnesses to the treatment the Germans meted out to our friends in Holland.
That's when the Canadians arrived, blasting their way into towns like this one, Apeldoorn, crushing the Nazis, liberating the people. The Dutch have never forgotten, never. And this week, they'll be in these streets again, by the thousands, to welcome back some of those Canadians, now in their 90s, who gave them their country, their lives back.
Okay, when I was in Holland, I was grown up with 5 younger brothers, and one of them was John. And then I went, before I went to Canada, growing up with so many boys that were always picking on me, of course, and especially John. And
He's a businessman. He goes out, he went to the back of the house and stole my brother's bike. And there he goes, out of the bike, gets a flat tire. So he thinks, I'll put that bike back in the things and don't say anything. So next morning my brother says, oh boy, I got a flat tire. And my brother says, oh, I can fix it for you. Give me a couple of dollars and I'll fix it for you. So he stole the bike and they still made money out of it. That's my brother John.
He's skating on ice when we have the ice in the rivers. So, and he's skating. And he has a photo when he is skating.
We're here over at the school. I used to go to school, got my education, and it's called the Dr. H. Baving School. And as you see, on the other side we have the little preschoolers. That's why I started first when I was 5 years old. And when I turned 6, I went to the school, that's the one behind me. And I went there from class number 1 to class number 6. And then I went to a different school. And we used to go Monday, every morning we used to go to the gym, and everybody got to get in the gym, and from there we went to the classes. We drove, ride a bike from home to here. When we had a bike, before we had a bike, we walked every day forth and back. And we had intermission from 12 to 2. So we went home, had lunch, and I came back. from 2 to 4.
The kids were very excited to see us.
Beetje Engels, nou je komt uit Canada.
Oh, ja, maar ik weet niet wat
Dan zeg je, why are you filming?
Why are you filming?
My father was here. He went to school here.
Oh!
They let us inside to see how things looked today.
Met de pen, kijk eens aan, dat is allemaal zo.
Ja,
Dat
zo.
zie je daar. Kijk eens aan. Dus je hoeft niet met de bord schoon te maken of niks.
Nee,
Wat wij vroeger moesten doen. Ja,
Je wordt ook niet meer zo
als je
gepiet
straf
van de
had-
krijtjes.
Als je straf had, dan moest je zo'n bord schoonmaken.
Nee, dat
Hoe doe je dat doen, hè?
En je wordt ook niet meer zo, je wordt ook niet meer gepiet van een krijtje of dat krijtje.
Nee, ja, want dat maakt wel lawaai natuurlijk. Ja. Ze hebben ook geen, zie je Jouke, geen zwart bord meer. Het is allemaal elektronisch nou.
Ja.
Nou, alstublieft.
Ja, ben ik er blij mee.
Ja, ik ook. Ja,
Wie weet staan we er nog in.
je weet het ook.
Nou, in ieder geval hoorden jullie net. Kijk, zo was het bij de opening. Dat moet je wel kennen.
Ja.
Maar er zijn ook foto's van. Hier het hek. Oh,
Ja.
hier, die bedoelde ik.
Oh ja.
Ja.
I remember that.
Ja.
Hey, het is echt nog hetzelfde.
Ja.
Het is echt nog hetzelfde.
Geweldig.
Veel plezier ermee.
Ja, oké. Jonge dames, bedankt.
Hartelijk bedankt, hè. Oké.
Ja, bedankt hoor voor de rondleiding. Fantastisch
Bedankt,
gedaan.
hè. Dat is leuk gedaan, hè.
Oké, tot ziens.
Do you spend a lot of time at the football office? No, I didn't. No, I was a pretty good boy.
He was not so good on the school. No. And did not. He hate learn at school. Go to school. But now he's clever.
How many years did you go to school?
I was 8 years in the school, and then I went to work when I was 14, and then I went for 3 or 4 years night school. Every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Fridays, from 7 to 10. That's where I became an electrician. My first job was with Rijbroek on Janstraat in Haarlem, and the very first day, I remember there was a brand new home we did. We wired a brand new home, so that was pretty good. But being the youngest kid on the block, of course, they flew around, and the doors and the washroom and so on, they were there was no handles in it yet, so you couldn't open them. So they threw me there and closed the door, and things like that. That's what you do when you started a job, and so that's interesting. But it was always a lot of fun. I had really good guys to work with. There was no problem. Okay, here's where we went in the mornings when I used to work here for Rijbroek. I started my apprenticeship in 55 to 59. That was 4 years of that. Every morning we get together here in this same spot where I'm standing now, and we're watching the big church behind us. And when it went 8 times, bang, 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 everybody just went into the little side street here, and there was a side door, and we went into the shop and we got our orders where we had to go to work for that day. And this is a long time ago, so it was very interesting to see all this. And they're still operating out of the same place here and still doing the electrical work, so it's quite amazing.
So the guy you talked to today, is that
That was
owner's
the son of the owner, but I used to work for, was his son. And his name was Joop, and so it was nice to see him, and he remembered me too as an apprentice way back. Okay, this is a place called Spadam, and it's over here where I used to go when I was growing up and went fishing with my dad. We'd be sitting over here and watch the ships go in and out. And this is the haven, they called it. We call it sluis, but we call it in English, we call it the locks. And these locks are used here in Holland all the time because all you see there, the ships here. My dad owned one of those ships laying behind us there, and to take you from places to place, and they transport all your goods, just like a big tractor trailer is doing that today. And since in Holland there's water everywhere, they use ships. It's an easier way to go. And we used to sit here all the time and do all our fishing. And fishing was always good. We used to have about 4 or 5 fish on a Saturday, and we take them home and eat Saturday night. We had fish. He was what we call a shipper. He was like a captain on a boat. Like, you know, he had his own boat for a long time, and then after the war he sold that, and then he worked for a factory, and he had the little boat goes forward and back to bring people across because there was no bridge, and people had to go to work by boat. That's how it was in Holland. That's all changed now. They put bridges there now, and so they don't have to do this anymore. When we were kids, were growing up, this is the part, this is the church we used to go to, and behind me you see the church. And we used to walk from home over to here, but it was about roughly a 45 minutes walk. And then we had a 2-hour church, and after church we had 1 hour to go to Sunday school, and then we had to walk back 45 minutes, and then we had dinner at home. And when we went from there, our dinner, we pretty well another hour or so we had to go back to it because we had also in the afternoon we had church at 5 o'clock. So at that time it took another 45 minutes to get here, and that was another 2 hours, and we had to walk all the way back. And we, as you can see now, the church has been sold and is now in what we call a sports center. As you can see, it's the outside is still the same, but the inside, of course, it will be completely changed. In those days we didn't have no central warming, so we had one big stove in the center of the church, and it was heated by coal. So we had to make sure that the coal was burning in the morning before we got there, so everything was nice and warm.
He was a little monkey. So special on Sundays, we had Sunday school afterwards, and we had to do some practicing for Christmas. Well, here was John, singing so loud and loud as he can. And of course, that was at that time, and finally the teacher said, "John, it's okay, calm down," but John didn't, he kept on going. He said, "You know, at Christmas time, how about if you don't say anything, don't sing, and you get an extra orange?" Well, that was for John. I mean, we were not that rich that we get oranges, so we always get an orange for Christmas at the Sunday school, but then he got another one, so he got 2 oranges. And afterwards he makes sure that he got his second orange, but he kept quiet because for him it was worth it that he had an extra orange.
Why did you move to Canada?
Because there was no future in Holland. It was pretty tough out there. Things were very poor, and I was kind of lucky to work for myself, and there was just no possibility in Holland to do that. So I kind of moved to Canada and hope for the best, and it worked out okay. They worked together. Canada needed some people. Holland a little bit too many, so they both played together. It cost me, I think the whole thing cost me $250 guldens in those days, so that was about $75. I got a letter from John. Can I come to Canada? Well, it was a little shock to me because I didn't really want them. No, you were young, you make decisions just like that. You know how it is. When you're young, you think you can do everything. Sometimes I regret it a little bit. I wonder what my life would have been if I didn't go, but that's not here or there.
Dat wilde vertellen, dat is namelijk dat wij in Nederland kenden wij een dienstplicht. En dat betekende dus dat de 3 zonen, eventueel 3 zonen uit het gezin in de militaire dienst moesten. Mijn oudere broer Leen was in militaire dienst. En mijn broer Arie was in militaire dienst. Zo was Jan aan de beurt. Maar wat deed Jan? Jan dacht, daar heb ik geen trekking. Dus ik ga emigreren naar Canada. Dus toen hij was geëmigreerd, was deze meneer aan de beurt. Dus moest ik de militaire dienst is. Dus Jan dacht van, bedankt Jouke, ik ga naar Canada, jij doet maar je dienstplicht.
That's me leaving Holland. That's my mother there. Kind of looks sad, I guess. And the only thing I had when I left was the little, you see the suitcase standing there, and that was it. That's all I had to go to Holland with. I left to Holland by ship here from Rotterdam. As you can see right behind me is the big ship laying. It's called the Rotterdam. It wasn't the same ship because the ship I went with was called the Grote Beer, and he's no longer in service. But this is a bit of an idea. It was the same location here when we left, and that was August the 8th in 1959. I took about it was 6 days on the boat, and August 14th we came to Quebec in Canada, and from there we went on the shore and did all the paperwork, and then from there we went back on the boat and went to Montreal. From Montreal we went on the train all the way to Brandon, Manitoba. That's where I met my sister back in on the 15th of August 1959. And the ship itself, we had about 8 people, 8 boys in each room, all separately. And that's how it was. We had no entertainment or anything like that. There was not a cruise ship like you see today. It was just a ship that takes immigrants across the ocean. We had a little bit of shuffleboard on top of the deck, and that was about it. So there was not much of entertainment out there, but we did okay. We had one of those old boats. They used to have the for the army. They used to transport the military to different places, and so it was not a luxury cruiser or anything like that. We had 8 people sleeping in one room, all bunk beds, and but you know they had the shuffleboard on the ship, and so they played some of that. And but the last 2 days, everybody was seasick except for me. It was only about 15 people left in the dining room to eat. Everybody else was seasick. But my stomach is pretty good, so I had never a problem with that. Maybe because my father was a captain, who knows this. That was 8 days. And it was one of the fastest one they did. They tried to make it the fastest trip, and it was the fastest trip they did. In Quebec. We got off in Quebec, and then, you know, did all the passport things, all the immigration papers there. And then we went back on the boat, and then we went to Montreal. When we got to Montreal, you know, we stayed overnight, and then we went on the train, and the train took us all the way to Brandon, Manitoba. And over there was a taxi waiting for me to pick me up, to take me to my sister's. But of course, you know, my sister was at the station waiting for me. This is the platform. You can see it's all overgrown now and broken up. This was the platform where I arrived in those days. My sister was walking forward and back, waiting patiently for the train to arrive. But then I got letters from my family and said, "Oh, John changed," but they didn't know that I had changed too. So when I got changed and he came, I was very, very happy with him. Okay, this is the original building of the railway station when I arrived, and it's now changed over to Western Immigrant Services, and that's kind of interesting because at that time I was an immigrant, so now the building is probably named after me, that I can see. The building was built in 1911, so it's still the same building as when I came here to Canada. This is the experimental farm. It was owned by the government of Canada, and this is the first place where I came, and Jake Bockhorst, who was my brother-in-law, was married to my sister, worked here for quite a few years, and for a while we lived here, about 5 or 6 months. We cannot find the place anymore. I guess it's torn down. There's a lot of new buildings up here. Everything is pretty well brand new, but the building at the back of me here, it looks like one of the older buildings. You see the old door in there, and it's really old, but they put new siding on it and probably a new roof and all that, but this is one of the older buildings. So it's very interesting to see that the farm is still in operation. And I had a little girl, 2-year-old girl, and of course that was just his favorite little niece, and together they were. And then my little girl was 2 years old when John came, and we was in the meantime she became 3 years old, of course. And about the first I got to Canada, there was Wilma, still a little kid, and that was back in Brandon, Manitoba. When I left Holland, my name was Jan Vink de Kwaadste. So when I came to Canada, it was very hard for anybody to pronounce my last name. So I dropped my last name and kept John Vink. The Jan became John, and so now my name is John Vink.
And you know what John was, of course, when John came to Brendan, we had the big difficult was we lived way out in the country and often snowed in. We were snowed. He came in August, I think, and then in October we were totally snowed in. And then we had a long, long laneway. We had no telephone, no TV, and no radio, so we were totally on our own. And so for my husband Jake, that was nice that he had John there. So with the two of them, they shuffle all out, and that was the way that we were able to go to town or go to work. Then he went to work by a jewelry store, and he was doing, I think Paul's rings, or they had clocks that had to be fixed. And
I worked for a jewelry store, making rings, sizing rings, and filing it and cleaning it. That's the kind of little job I got when I got there.
How did you get that job?
Through friends of Stella's. They got me in there.
Did you have any experience before?
No. I was just doing that. You know, they had a goldsmith there, and he showed me what to do, and so I did it. On the background, you see a building. It's 123 10th Avenue. There used to be Ted Hemmings Jewelry. Well, he passed away, and the store is now closed. There's nothing there anymore, but these are good old memories. I used to do the work with a goldsmith, you know, sizing rings, filing rings, polishing rings, and all that kind of stuff. So, and with Christmas time, we worked till 9 o'clock, so we always paid for dinner that night. And right next door, there's a restaurant. There's still a restaurant there, but of course, I don't think it's the same owners. We're talking about 55 years.
About a half hour after we left, they destroyed the building.
Every Sunday morning we used to go to church here with Jake and Stella, and that was of course 55 years ago, and the church is still here. It looks still like this Christian Reformed church, so, and that was the church. Well, Jake and Stella, my brother-in-law and my sister, they said, well, we're going to move to Ontario, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm going to go with you, simple as that. I'm not going to stay there all by myself. So I went with him, that's the only reason I went. Well, I looked at the map, I see a little dot, that was St. Thomas. And then I see this big, huge dot that was stronger, and that is better. Being 18-year-old, 19-year-old, that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
We want to go back to our own church that we grew up in, the Free Reformed Church in Holland. And so we went to, so he came along, but he didn't like small towns, he wanted a big town. So we dropped him off in Toronto by our pastor there, what we had. We were riding back and forth and see where we had never been in St. Thomas, we never knew anybody. But there were what we called field men, and they took care of the immigrants. So we went, so we dropped John off, and then we went on to St. Thomas.
All right, so we got to Toronto around May 6th, and then we went to the minister's son's house, and that's where I stayed there for a while, for the room. So.
And how did you know the minister that you stayed at?
Well, Jake and Stella, they arranged all that. They called, they knew where they were going, and they know the minister from the church, and so that's how it all happened. About 6 months or so. And then I got a first job over at Laidland Lumber. I met people from the church, my friend. We became friends, and his father was working there. And he got me into the job in there, so that was pretty good. And I was emptying boxcars, take all the 204s out and all that. And then I worked myself up, I became a shipper. I shipped the stuff, and they gave me a lift truck to drive. That was really good. Okay, we look at the back here is a mill. It's called, it used to be Laidland Lumber, and that was my first job. As you see in the background there, the mill is still there. The name has changed, but everything there. We used to make hardwood will come in by trains and put it through the mill and make flooring out of it and everything else. So that was 40 years ago, 45 years ago. And as you can see, it's getting a little old in there now and it's kind of run down. And so I drove the lift truck, and then when I was there, I had to go to pick up something in the mill. They have a mill there, and so they got big doors in front of them. So there's a string, you pull the string, it opens the door. And so when I was out inside, I looked around, I didn't see what I'm looking for, so I whipped around to go out. The machine cut the string, and by the time I got to the door, the door was closed. So I kind of went through it. And so then, of course, the big chiefs came out and all that, and they said, well, so they gave me a lift truck to drive without power steering and everything else. So I was kind of upset because I figured it wasn't my fault. My fault that the lift truck hit that string. So I was looking at the paper, and it says, journeyman electrician one. I said, oh, that's what I'm looking for. So I called the guy, he went over, and he hired me, and everything was pinky-dinky. And so then about 2 weeks later, he said to me, are you a journeyman? I said, what do you mean by journeyman? Do you have a license? I said, no, I don't have a license. He said, well, I'm asking for a journeyman. He says, well, I said, I didn't know. I said, okay. He says, well, he says, I like the way you are, you work, you do okay. He said, but I take 20 cents off your wages. I said, that's okay. Per hour, 20 cents off. So that worked out okay. So, and then from there on, I've been in the electrical trade ever since.
When we went to Ontario, he dropped him off in Toronto, but then we still saw him many, many times. He would come, he had his first Volkswagen.
That was my first car I bought when I went to Canada, and once I drove the car, and I said to myself, I'll never ride another bicycle, and I never did.
And then he came with his friends, 3 of them, so I lived in a very, very small house, and John and his 3 friends had to sleep on the floor in the kitchen. But we had always had a lot of fun together. So that was totally different story than it was way back. It was always Wilma's favorite uncle, because that was the first really uncle that she really had.
Yeah, I work for CIL.
CIL.
There's a paint company. They make all kinds of paints and everything else. And as an electrician, as a maintenance electrician, fix things when they don't go wrong. And I install a lot of light fixtures for them, do all that kind of stuff.
And John, well, he loves children, so that clicked all very well. Later on, I get more children, and so when the years went on, and of course he came more than once to St. Thomas, and I went to church with us, and well, once I want to have a babysitter, and so I have Jeanette van den Burg babysit for us, and so that went a few times, and that whenever I needed her, as he was able, and then it happened that John and Jeanette came at the same time.
Well, she was over at Understanding House babysitting, but she was going to the same church, so we all went to the church.
And well, I guess they went all of a sudden. Before we knew, they were together all the time. So then they dated, and then.
So it was in 1961, I think, and we broke up for a while, and we went back in 1963. Went back together, and we got married in 1965. We went together for 2 years. Oh yeah, I drove for and back every weekend. 2 years for and back every weekend. To see my lovely girl. That's the way it works,
3 o'clock ceremony planned. Miss Jeanette Wilhelmina Frederica van den Burg and John Vink have chosen Saturday, May 22nd, as their wedding day. The ceremony will take place in the Free Christian Reformed Church. Mr. and Mrs. John van den Burg, 46 Hiawatha Street, are the parents of the bride-elect, and her fiancé's parents reside in Holland. Mr. and Mrs. John van den Burg request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Jeanette Wilhelmina Frederica, to Mr. John Vink on Saturday, May the 22nd 1965 at 3 o'clock p.m. Free Christian Reformed Church, Hiawatha Street, St. Thomas.
In 1965, I got married to Jeanette Vandenberg. We walked out of this home here and took us to the church. We had a lot of good times here together. We did our necking in that room right up top there. You see the window, that was her room. And her father and mother left here forever. And okay, once we left the house to get married, just around the corner is our church. And this is our little white church. We used to go there every Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon to church. We were good church people those days. And so that's why we got married, in this church. Her father didn't want to bring the bride in because that's not Dutch. So the Dutch system is you bring your own bride in. So we walked together into the front. And her father was an organist in the church, so he played the organ. And then we got signed together and promised we'll live together forever, but promises are never kept. And about 25 years later we got divorced.
Also, I was in the wedding party, and so was my little girl. That was, in the meantime, became 8, I think. And so she became the little flower girl. So that was always special for Wilma, yeah.
Okay, the one on the left, the very left is Jake Pokers, is my brother-in-law. Then is Robert van Schubert, he was my best friend. That is me, and then Jeanette, and then is Mary, that's Jeanette's sister. And the other girl's name was something, I forgot. And the girl in the front is Wilma.
Here in front of the home we bought back in 1965. When Jeanette and me got married, we moved in here. We had 2 children over here, John and Cindy. And the house was brand new. I did my own wiring. And as you can see, I put an air conditioner on top of the roof. And it's still there, so it still looks good. They put a veranda in the front there, which looks very nice. And the house still looks good after 40 years.
I opened up a fish and chip store, so I did a fish and chips for part-time, but then after a while I got busy and then I did a full-time at the fish and chips and I quit there. Oh, the same father as my friend. They had a fish and chip store and they sold theirs or whatever, and they kind of closed it up, and so they wanted to buy this one, and they wanted me to go partner with them. They knew how to do the fish and chips, but they didn't have enough money, so I put the money up. And together we went there for, I think that was about a year, and then I bought them out. I owned a fish and chip store, and then I sold it later, opened up another one, and that was the one in Mississauga, 1022 Burnetop Road, and that was in Mississauga, so we opened there.
Okay, behind you see Applewood Fish and Chips. I opened this store here in 1969. I opened this store here and built the inside, put all the equipment in. And as I look at it now, it's still the same counters, but I built there and some of the overhangs. And the Fish and Chips is here now, still here for a long, long time. And Cindy was born while we were operating the Fish and Chips on a Friday afternoon, and so was John. And they were born in Mississauga Hospital. And so that was one of our stories of our life. As you see, right next door is now Space Natural Food. We used to have our dry cleaning place in there, but we took over. And that's the story. I built the whole thing. I did the canopy over the fryers and all that, and put everything in. We were selling that. I opened it up in July of 1969, and when we opened up from the fryers to the front door was a lineup. From the front door across the parking lot to the other side of the parking lot, the lineup was that long. We were selling fish and chips for 75 cents an order, and that opening day we had any piece of fish you bought, you get free chips, and it was a big success. We ran the place for about 4 years, and then we sold it, and we strictly had fish and chips, halibut, and chips, no other fish, and we had some onion rings and hamburgers, and that was it. Because I appreciate it's still around. And we done that for about 2 or 3 years, I guess, and Cindy was born there, and on a Friday there, on June 24. No, not, June 24, 1970. 26, yes, 26. You better put it in, make sure it makes 26, okay?
The first time I met Dad was on the 26th of June, 19-something. My mom was overdue for me, and so they were trying to have a way of me coming out early, so they decided to jump on the bed, and it was very warm that day, and so my dad hadn't had the air conditioning in the window yet, and so they opened the window to get some fresh air, and a whole bunch of flies came into the room. So they were jumping on the bed, and there were flies everywhere, and next thing you know, Mom went into labor, and the blessed day arrived when I came.
Cynthia Ann was my first child. She was born in 1970, and then John came along, John A. Fink, and that was 2 years later. Years ago, I don't know anybody remember, in Toronto, we had a blackout. That was December the 5th in 1971. We had nothing to do, so I said to my wife, let's make a sun. That took all of 2 minutes. Okay, we're in front of the Mississauga Hospital in Mississauga, where Cindy and John were born. Cindy's now 46-year-old, coming up on June, and John will be 44 in August. And they were born here, so we took them to the hospital. And Cindy was born on a Friday, and John was born on a Wednesday. And so I picked them up from here and took them home. And they cried as usual, but they got over it.
I first met Dad on August 10th, 1972. That was a Thursday.
My earliest memory of Dad, I think, was when we lived on our house in Toronto on, I think it was Navy Crescent, that place. I just remember being outside playing on our long driveway. Dad used to come out and watch me and stuff like that.
One of my earliest childhood memories is playing Legos with my dad. I had a lot of Legos, and it was fun to play with them. And who better to play with Legos than my dad?
And after I sold all the fish and chip store, I went to work for the Princess Margaret Hospital, and I was a maintenance electrician. I was there for a year. Behind me, you see the big towers there. There's a condominium. It used to be the Princess Margaret Hospital. I used to work in there for 1 year as a maintenance electrician. I put all new stuff in, new pipe, new plugs. Then somebody came along and just tore the whole thing down. All the work was done for me was for nothing. It's not there anymore, it's gone. Or so when I started working for Judson Electric. And then eventually I went to St. Thomas, did my own job. Got my own business going. Okay, when we left Toronto to go to London, this was the first house we bought. And it was still being built. I did my own electrical wiring in there, and from there we started the company in St. Thomas. It's called Finch Electric. Well, Vink is a bird in Holland. It's got a little Vink, and it's called a finch in English. So when I lived at that time close to Finch, which was Finch, so I picked Finch Electric.
Well, I didn't need the master license to start my own business, so I went to London. It's, in Toronto you did in those days already, but the smaller towns you didn't need it. So that's why. But then while I was in London, I did get my master license already there. So that I have a master license, I can go anywhere I want. Because Uncle John, Vandenberg, they were all living there, so I knew a lot of people. Uncle Jake worked there in construction, so it didn't take long. I got my feet in and everywhere, and got a lot of builders. We had a row housing, and it was called the Parade of Homes, and there was 10 different builders in there. Everybody did one house, and we wired 9 of them. So we worked for 9 builders out of the 10. So that's how we built it up. So that was pretty good. In 1975, I moved to St. Thomas, and we started our own business. And this is the house behind us. We bought that place, and we had an office in there, and used the basement as storage for about a couple of years. Okay, we sold the other place there, and so we came over here and we bought an old house here. You see the new building behind us. It used to be an old house, and we remodeled it and put a lighting store in there, all kinds of lighting fixtures everywhere, and in the basement we used it as storage, and we had that for about a year, and then we sold that, and then we moved on to the next place.
I mean, remember we went to Disney? It's funny how I just know that we went there, but I don't remember a whole lot of what happened, but I'm pretty sure we had a good time. We used to go to the cottage in the summertime for a month, and Dad used to come for a week and then leave for a week and then come back for a week just because of working and stuff like that. And he used to play horseshoes a lot, and what was that? He liked to fish.
That was the big mouth bars. I got a couple of awards for that. The biggest one caught in the lake for a long time. It was the small mouth bars, and it was over 5 pounds. And it was a great excitement. It was the last day we were there. We were going to leave in a couple of hours, and Cindy and John both were in the boat with me when we caught that fish.
But I don't remember the event of it happening, so it's probably good that we have a picture of it, otherwise it might just be a story that Dad was telling.
This is the last place we had. This is the big building here. In the garage on the side for the trucks to park in. And this here in the front, you can see that was my office.
Oh, I always remember Dad as being an electrician. You know, we used to take turns going with Dad to work every other Saturday.
Cindy and I used to love going with him to work and watching him work and see what he does. But I think we fought too much. So it would be one Saturday Cindy would go, and then the next Saturday I would go, and we'd switch back and forth. We would get to play in the office. We would like photocopy our hand and then fold it and staple it.
We had a big sign hanging above the door, and Vince Electric on it. And then we did a big job for about $175, and we were left in the back with that, so we had no choice but to declare bankruptcy. And when we were here the last day, the sign fell down, so the sign that it was over. That was it. Well, we ended up with 4 trucks on the road, a bunch of guys working, so we did pretty good. About 5 years. Well, somebody decided not to pay me, and it was more money than I could handle, so we had to call ourselves bankrupt. And that's the end of that story there. That's when I went to BC. Okay, we're in front of the Trail BC sign. This is when I arrived back in 1980 and joined the Cominco over here and worked there for 5 years.
Got a job there in BC as an electrician. There was no jobs around where I was, so through agency in London. They had an office there and they hired it from there. And so they hired a lot of guys. There's a big addition they did in the factory. So they hired a lot of electricians, carpenters, everybody. It's all done to there. So from there they flew me down to BC and they started me, and then after 2 months I was allowed to bring the family over. They paid for all that.
Okay, we're back here in Trail in BC here. This was the house when I arrived the first when I came to BC. I just came by myself, so I just had a room here, and as you can see, there's at the bottom there, the one to the left, that's the room I stayed, and I stayed here for about 3 or 4 months until the family came over, and then we moved to Mount Rose, where we had the house over there we rented, and that was the beginning of my stay in Trail.
There's a big smelter, and they put a big addition in, and so with all the new wiring and that and everything else, then I became a maintenance electrician in there.
Okay, we're over here in Trail BC, Cominco. I worked here for 5 years. In the background you see the big building. The building was about 5 football field long, and I looked after the electrical there. I helped building this building and put the electrical in, and then after that I was in maintenance, and there was a 12 shifts, and night shift, we played cards all night. They were happy because the plant was running, so they were very good. So after that, I went back into the plant and helped out other things. The thing is, they go on strike, they have no idea why. They just have somebody, oh, I don't like this, and they're like, oh, let's go on strike, and everybody walks out. I had a family to support. I wasn't going to walk out, no way, because I need to make the money. So I stayed, and of course I got a lot of trouble with the guys and everything else. Oh, I just camp and all this, but hey, my important thing is my family, not them. So the strike usually only lasted about 3 or 4 days. Okay, so they never got paid by the union or by the company, so they lose that money. That's what they do.
Oh, yeah.
And usually when you go on strike, you lose more than you're going to gain when you get back to work, you know. People go on strike and they want $2 more, but by the time the strike is over, they lost $4 more, okay? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm against strikes, I'm against unions, so that's part of my life. So I always said when I had my company, anybody wants to go union, I close the shop. There's no way I go union, because they run your company. Okay, we're standing in front of the house I built on 22nd of May in 1981 back here in BC when we moved out here. It took me 9 months to build it. I poured the footings, I poured the walls, I built up the structure, and we did everything inside, the electrical and the plumbing. And the only thing we didn't do, we put all the drywall up, and then I got a guy to come in to do all the taping, because that's very fussy work. You got to know what you're doing. And then we had all the singles laying on the front lawn, the bundles, and the guy walked by, he said, sir, for $250, I put him on the roof, and I told him, of course, go right ahead. And that was the 2 things we had to pay for. And we had a great time doing it. The kids helped me doing all the gravel all the way around the outside for the draining system, and they got paid very well, 10 cents a bucket, and they're still living on that now, years later. And yeah, so we all worked together on it, and we moved in March of '82, and we're very well. Now we were lucky last Sunday when we got here. The people were home and they gave us a tour in the house, what it looks like now, and it's of course about 30 years later, and they did quite a bit of remodeling, but the bathroom was still the same, the kitchen is pretty well the same, and you know, they just took out the carpet and put hardwood flooring in, which everybody is doing today. So we're very happy to see this house and see that it'll take care of.
So Dad built our house in Fruitvale, and I don't know how we did it. At the time, it didn't seem like a miracle because, you know, hey, I'm I'm 7 and my dad can do anything. And so sure, yeah, he can build a house. He drew all the plans. He'd spend, nights and weekends working on it. He would use this actual ruler. This is the ruler he used to make the plans for the house. And then once the plans were made, we went to the property and, he hired this truck to dig out the basement. And then he laid down the forms for the cement footings, and then the forms for all the walls, and then built the walls out of wood, and he used a gun to put it into the cement, and then he built the floors, and he did the whole thing. He drew he did the drywall, all the electrical, of course, the plumbing. I would go and come along and help, but there's only so much a 8-year-old can do to help. I remember looking through a telescope, and he would have his finger on the wall, and he would say higher or lower, because he had to get his finger right where the telescope was. And I have no idea why we were doing that, but I guess that's how you build a house. He knew how to build a house and I didn't. Later in life, looking back, I'm amazed. How did he build a house? How did he know how to build a house? I know he worked in electrical, and so he was on construction sites all the time. And so he read plans and he knew, how to read them. But how do you know how to draw plans? How do you know how to do all the footings? How do you know how to build a house? I don't know how he knew how to build a house. It still amazes me that he built a house.
So that is the birthday of birth of the house. Oh, what? So then we moved in a new home that I built.
Okay, we're over here at Benny and Corey, and it was about 20 years ago the last time I seen him. And we built this house about 32 years ago. Me and Benny, we built all the walls, we built the siding, we did the drywall. Of course, I did the electrical work. The inspector wasn't very agreeable, but we got it done anyway. And it was really nice. And they're our best friends when we were here.
It is very nice to see John after 20 years again. I just wanted to say a little bit of a story about Jan, how we got to meet him and everything else. We met John about in 1981 when we moved from Holland to Canada. We met John, and John was going to build a house, and Benny helped John to build the house, and he helped us to build the house. And John did all the electrical wiring in the house and a whole lot more because he did a lot. And one day I had to come to the house, and I had to wait for the inspector to come, and the inspector came and he checked all the wiring, and he said, "Who did your wiring?" And I said, "Oh, it was a friend of ours who did it." And he shut us down for about 3 weeks because we were not allowed to do that. If I would have said that there was an electrician, or if that Benny would have done it himself, then we wouldn't have had a problem. So John had to find us a certified electrician who helped us out to put a name on John's piece of paper. What was not fun at that time, but now talking about it in the past, we did have a lot of fun with all of us.
We got to know John in 1981 when we just moved into Canada, and I helped John building his house, and he helped us building our house. Played a lot of cards together. We had an excellent time at it in those years. It's too bad that it happened this way, that John moved away, but boy, we had a great time. I worked at Comenco. John was an electrician. I was a welder at the time. Went out quite often. And when John got laid off at Comenco, he rewired the whole house over here. And for 3 months we were building over here day in, day out. And within 5 months, we started in April, and in September we moved in the same year. So we did a very good job at the time.
We used to play Klaverjassen. Jeanette always used to get mad at John because John never took anything serious. So she always was mad and got mad and didn't want to play with John anymore because he always forfeited the game.
Okay, behind me you see the Alliance Church in Trail, BC. this where we came here in 1980 and became a member to 1985 when we moved out of here. And we spent all our Sundays here, of course, and were involved with quite a few things in the church.
I remember I was in grade 4 and I used my first Apple computer at school. And so I came home and I said, Dad, what we need is a computer at home. We can't be left behind. We need a computer here. And I'm sure I made up some crazy reasons why we needed it. And then one day Dad brought home a VIC-20 computer and it was amazing. And so we get to program on it and play games. I remember it came with 2 games, and the first night we'd play, until bedtime. And then I heard the story that after we went to bed, Mom and Dad played, and I think they said to each other, hey, look, the sun's coming up. Maybe we should go to bed now. And then after that, he got me a Commodore 64, and then he got me a Commodore 128, and that turned out to be my career. I went to university for that, and then I got a job, and then I invented the iPhone. So you could say, without him, there'd be no iPhone.
And then after 3 years, they said there was a job for life, but after 3 years, everybody got kind of laid off. And it doesn't matter how good you were or not, you go by number, first hired, last hired, first out. So that's the way it worked. So I worked down the numbers and numbers. Then I had to work in a factory for a while, shovel some dirt and stuff like that. And then that job ran out, so then they told me that it's the end of the line. So then I started looking for a job out there, and nothing. So I got myself a job through unemployment insurance office. They got me a job to go to Guelph in Ontario, so I went back to Ontario.
Things were tough in the small town of Trail, and Dad left again to go back to Ontario for work again, and stayed there. Would come home to visit and whatnot.
I remember when I was in grade 8 and Dad had to move away to Ontario for work because there was no work to be found in Trail, and that was tough. That was sad. I missed him a lot, but I understood that he was making a huge sacrifice for our family, and we all had to make a sacrifice.
They made the big wheels for the discs, for the brakes, the little drums, the big drums. They go on the brakes. That's what they made there. And there was an electrician in there. And then I went back for Judson Electric for 1 year.
Once the work ran out in BC, I had to move back to Toronto to find a job. So I got here, and then I moved to this apartment over here. It's number 2. And then we got a bit of an argument, so I said, okay, that's it. I'll start my own company there.
Some of my best memories growing up was in high school when I got to spend the summers in Toronto working for my dad. It was a lot of fun, and we worked all over Toronto, so I got to see the whole city. Every day we were going somewhere different. And then on the weekends, often on Saturday we could work too, but then Sundays we would do something fun. He would show me around Toronto and the area. Great experience for me because I was living in a small town, so to see the big city and working it every day, that was great memories I have of that. And I was pretty good at it too. Like, I knew exactly what wires to connect together to, for this switch to turn that light on and off. I was great at it.
Well, I don't know if you people know, but I'm an electrical contractor, and when you're own your own business, you always like to see the name father and son. Well, John worked in the summers for me when he was going to university school, and I see him working, and then one day I stand there, and John was trying to cut a wire, and he was standing there like this. And I said to myself, be never father and son.
I knew the knowledge, but the manual part of like cutting wires and stripping wires and in that, I wasn't quite so good at. But just last week, I installed a dimmer in my house by myself.
He came home for my graduation, and after that, I always wanted to be a legal secretary. I knew since I was in grade 6 that was something that I wanted to do, and so that's what I'd always talked about being. And when Dad was in Toronto, he looked at a school that was there called Success Business College, and he enrolled me into a legal secretary or legal assistant program that was there. So I left our small little town and moved to the big city of Toronto and lived with Dad while I was going to school and working part-time at Cookies by George. I don't even know if they're around anymore.
And after that we moved to number 4, a couple of doors over, because my daughter Cindy came over and John came over, so we needed more room. Okay, so after apartment number 2, we moved to number 4 here, as you can see. This is where number 4 is. We stayed there for the rest of the time in the one apartment, 1 bedroom, and so with Cindy and moved out, and then John moved in with me. And then Cindy moved in later on, next door to me, and also in number 2. The apartment right in front there. As you can see, the cats is still there.
I remember one night, the girls on the course and I decided we were going to go out on a Friday night, hit the big city of Toronto. The girls and I had taken the bus there, and it was the end of the evening, and like girls sometimes do, there was a little bit of confrontation and people got into little bits of a fight or whatever. So anyways, I ended up having to get my own ride back, and of course I had no idea where I was or how to get back. So I called Dad and I said, you know, Dad, I need a ride home. And Dad said, well, where are you? I only knew the name of the place I was at. I had no idea where it was. And Dad said, well, how did you get there? And I said, the bus, like it was like 4 bus stops. So Dad was trying to find me, and I guess when I meant 4 bus stops, I meant that the bus stopped 4 times. So apparently there's a lot more bus stops that were in between, but yeah, Dad couldn't find me because of my bad directions. So Dad said, take a taxi, and that Dad would help me pay for the taxi when I got there. So I grabbed a taxi, and the taxi driver, as we started getting closer into town and I started to realize where we kind of were, the taxi driver decided that he was going to say some inappropriate things and take some detours down different ways. So I was pretty scared, and I got very violently with my words and stuff like that. I was ready to open the door and jump out of the taxi. We finally made it to Dad's house, and I ran out of the taxi. I just threw some money at him. I ran out of the taxi, and I came to see Dad, and I was crying. And I told Dad what happened between tears, and Dad ran out of the apartment and was going to, I think he was going to kill that taxi driver. Like, Dad was so mad.
From Ellsworth there, we moved over to this apartment building, me and John. We were living at the 17th floor, way up there. We had a 1-bedroom apartment, and so John moved into the bedroom. And I just slept on the couch around the corner because John was going to school and all his paperwork, so he had needed a room by himself so he could study. So that was great times together. He usually picked up the groceries. I just gave him the money, and he picked up the groceries, whatever he wanted to eat. And he used to go back and forth to York University. And one night he never showed up, so I got all worried and upset. So finally got a hold of him in the morning. Yeah, he said, I just stayed all night. Doesn't let Dad know, of course, because he doesn't know that fathers worry about the kids.
After I graduated high school, I then got to live with Dad while I went to university. That helped out a lot. He would often let me have, the bedroom, so I had, a quiet place to study and work and he, again sacrificed. He would be, sleeping maybe on a cot or the couch for a long time, depending on whether or not he had his office, inside an apartment or not.
I met my husband and, my dad walked me up the aisle, and it was like the proudest day to see on his face. And he did say that if I wanted to change my mind, we would still be okay to have the party.
Okay, and we had our business here in Toronto. We did all the banking in the TD Bank, as you can see in the top there, the TD Bank. Right beside this building was not there. We took the building down, and we had an office in the old building right beside the bank. But it's all gone now, so now we'll be very, very busy in the section. That is me and my office, and the guy who been working for me in Jovi Limited in Toronto. There were all the guys working for me. The girl was my secretary in the office, and so it was kind of nice picture. And it was around Christmas time, was the little Christmas party we had in the office.
While I was in university, I worked for a lawyer.
So I called John. He was working in a lawyer's office, and I said, "Can I speak to John Vink?" "Yeah, sure," she said, the little girl on the phone. "Who are you?" I said, "My name is John Vink." "That is amazing. 2 John Vinks. And John Vinks is not a common name. How is this possible?" "Well, I'm his father, okay?"
He tells a story as often as he can. After university, I wanted to, move out on my own with, a buddy so we could have the wild, single life, I guess. And I got my first real job.
Dwayne and John decided they can't pick up on the girls when they stay with his father, so they decided to get their own apartment. So John kind of moved out, took half of my furniture because he didn't have money. Well, when he was moved out, I said to John, "Look, you're on your own, that's great, but we've got to get one thing going." So every Thursday night, we went out for dinner. So every Thursday night was a very traditional dinner. John would have chicken teriyaki, and I would have the steak. Traditional every night. "Thank you, Dad," and Dad paid the bill.
It was great because I would have chicken and he would have steak, and then he would pay for it. So that was a really good deal for me.
I remember the day that we found out we were being posted to Victoria, and it was around the same time that John found out that he was going to California. And when the day finally came, Dad took us to the airport, and I remember him being there and crying, saying that it was the hardest day for him, he said later on, knowing that both of his kids were going to be gone. And I mean, we're not talking about like just the next city over. We're talking pretty far away. So that was really hard for him. I know it was really hard for him. It was hard for us too.
We had that for quite a while. And then I sold it, and we moved to Orillia.
I met John in a coffee shop just outside of Brampton, Bramalea. I'm trying to think of the year. So 20 years ago, because it's our anniversary on the 1st of May. So that's how long ago it was. Now, what did Dad tell you how he met me?
At a friend's place there. We had a party or something, and we met together there.
And he looked pretty good. Silver hair. He was dressed really sharp, and he started talking to me, and he asked me if I was in real estate, and I said I was, and he just came right over and sat down with me. He was very smiley and very friendly, and when I started talking to him, I knew he liked me right away because he leaned right forward with both arms and crossed over like this, and he said, "So, where do you live?" He brought me up to see you in his apartment. And I remember when I saw you, I'll tell you, it was really interesting because I saw his little apartment there. I saw in the dining room, there was a kitchen, there was a dining room, and there was a little curtain there, and I saw a bed there. And I wondered what that was, and then he showed me the living room, and then he opened the bedroom door, and you were in there with computers everywhere and all of that. And he said who you were, and you mentioned that you just seen me on TV, on a real estate commercial. And anyway, so when we came out, I thought to myself, but geez, what a great guy John is, because, you know, he lets his son have the bedroom and he sleeps on a cot in the living room. That's really a good father. So he got major brownie points, okay? He asked me to marry him in my real estate office. I had a private office, and he did it there, and he said he did it there after because he knew that was my most comfortable place, and he figured I wouldn't cause a scene or I wouldn't say no because I wouldn't want to embarrass them. That's what he said. Yeah, I was really surprised. I was very surprised. I didn't expect it at all. Like we'd gone out for, I don't know, maybe 9 months,
Also about 2 years.
And that, and but he lived far away, and I was down, and it wasn't close relationship in distance for traveling, and. Our wedding was lovely. We decided to get married in Jamaica because John's family is much more biblical and religious than my family, and we were worried that a lot of them were Dutch Reform, and that our two families might not gel too well. So we decided that it would be better for us to not elope, but to go to Jamaica and have our wedding.
Uncle Jouken and Arie, they were over from Holland. And Uncle Jack and me and Lolly, the 8 of us went playing mini golf in St. Thomas.
His family came over, he was with Stella and a couple of his brothers, and we went mini golfing.
The boys played together and the girls played together.
I was with the women and he was with the men.
And when we finished playing, and I said to Lolly, I said, look, this would be a nice little job to build something like that for retirement. And she said, oh, geez, I was thinking the same thing.
And it's a story of our life, actually, because when he came back, he said, you know what, Lol, I got a great idea. And I had just said to the girls, this is really nice, this mini golf. Maybe John and I should think about opening a mini golf. And he said to the guys the very same thing. And he came back and said to me, you know what do you think about opening a mini golf? And everybody looked at everybody and we couldn't believe it. So we said, that's a sign.
So at that time we were boating from Beaverton. We had a boat, we were boating from Beaverton, which is Lolly's daughters owned the place there. And so we went to Aurelia, went to the information center, the people want to find out things, and we asked them if we could find a mini golf, and they told us, well, there's no mini golf here in town.
So then he started driving around on his own to all the little towns outside of Brampton to see if there was any mini golfs there. And when he got to Aurelia, he went to the city and he asked, and they said no, there wasn't. And
so drove around, didn't find anything, and then we decided to go to Aurelia.
So then he came home. He said, well, let's look around for a spot, and we saw this old motel with a bit of property, and there was a school across the way from it. So we looked at it, and we both stood there looking at it, and he said, yeah, we agreed that was a good property.
We bought an old motel, and it had 5 little rooms and a house. So we bought that, pretty reasonable, and then we took all the walls out and left the roof, and it became like a railroad station. And that's why the reason we call it the Red Caboose, because the Red Caboose in those days, you don't see them anymore, and it was the last train on the train, was the Red Caboose.
So we were looking at it, and we decided that, I don't know which one of us thought of it, I really don't, that we could make it like a train station, and we came up with the Red Caboose mini golf.
Me and John and the Red Caboose mini golf. John is giving me the first $5, the very first $5 we made for opening up the mini golf business. When we moved to Aurelia, this is the first house we bought. It was still being built, so it was brand new when we moved in.
At Museum Drive in Aurelia, it was a condo, townhouse, very, very nice, very, very nice.
And after 1 year, we were able to sell it and moved to a trailer for a year. And from the trailer, we went into the Red Caboose, where the addition was done, and moved into the Red Caboose.
and we decided we'd build our house on the back of the mini golf, attached to the old house, and lived there. So that's exactly what we did, and we had it for 10 years.
19 years ago, I built the mini golf you can see behind me, and we call it the Red Caboose Mini Golf. And then we sold it after 9 years, and the new owners are in there now, and they put in a chip truck and all that. We didn't have that, but you can see there's all these doors. They used to be a motel with all different rooms. So we took the motel out and left the roof, and it looked like a radio station.
But really I only did 20% of it. He did 80% of all of that. He was really into it, you know. We were open from 10 till 11 at night, and he just loved all the kids, and all the school buses would come, and he'd be on there telling them all what to do. He just loved it.
Well, it was a lot of fun with all the kids and all that. There was no problem, but the problem was started to get a little bit too much because it was every day from 10 to 10, 7 days a week.
A couple of people knew he was an electrician, so they asked him to do this and they asked him to do that. And when we moved over to the Red Caboose, he says, you know what, I should just get a truck. You know, everybody's coming to me to do favors for electrical. I might as well just get a truck and do a little business here. So that's how he became Jan the Electric Man.
And I also, in the winter, I had nothing to do, so I always had a little bit of electrical to do, and a little more electrical, and then a little more electrical, and then we built another company. And right now, today, we have another 2 trucks on the road and 5 guys working.
And 10 years was enough, though. We wanted out, we were tired, we wanted, you know, we're getting older, and so we sold it. We got, you know, did well on that. And by then, he had 2 trucks on the road as well. And
so, no time, I was getting a little too hard on me. Plus the electrical on the side, too. So I always had kids working for me, and I did some electrical work. But so then decided that we sell, and so we sold it after 9 years. So that was pretty good.
Okay, right behind you see the big green doors that leads to a basement, which we rent for Jan the Electric Man. We put all our materials, our tools and stuff in there, ladders and all that kind of stuff. It's a huge basement, and I was very lucky to be able to rent it from a friend of mine for $50 a month, so I can't complain about that. When we sold the Red Kaboom, we moved in here for 9 years.
Yeah, we moved to Grenfell. It was really lovely, nice side split. I had a lovely garden. I love gardening. I made my English garden there, and he built a beautiful pond in the back, and had a lot of trees. So he'd sit out there on the deck, you know, having his afternoon cocktail. And we really loved it there, and we were about 9 years there. And he was getting too hard for both of us. You know, his legs were giving out, and he was really busy in the business, and we thought we would, you know, maybe move to a smaller house when.
And here we ended up in Rachel Road. It is an old age community. This is where we try to stay the rest of our life. We love the apartment we got in here. It's very nice and all on one floor, and so we hope to stay here for a long, long time.
And then we got a dog. You know, early in our relationship, he'd never had a pet in his life. And we had a little Charlie. He was a little Shih Tzu, and he loved that dog. And he loves this dog too, Max. He loves the dog. So we won't have another cat. Now we know that, like, Max is 7, so by the time he goes, it's too late to get another dog. So I said, well, that's okay. When he goes, we'll get a cat. He said, no way, we're getting a cat. No way. But I'll work on it. I'll just come home with it.
Are you ever going to retire?
Don't think so, no.
Going to keep working?
Yeah, no, I really enjoy it, and I don't want to sit at home all day by myself, do nothing. So I found it very boring. So I have a nice life. I go in the mornings, I'm semi-retired. In the afternoon I'm always home. Unless somebody calls me for something, but usually in the afternoon I'm home. I relax, play a little poker and a computer, and watch some movies tonight, and together at night. And that's the way. So it's a good life. Can't complain.
What are your future plans?
No, I don't have future plans. I just keep on going the way it is. No real future plans. So that's good?
I guess for now.
All right, good.
He grew up tot a nice boy.
He's been a good brother to me, actually.
We've known each other since we were 9 or 10.
He's sensitive to other people.
We've climbed hills and trees.
But boy, we had a great time.
Learned of love and ABC.
When we grow up, we become both a little bit wiser, and I really started loving John.
When all the birds are singing in the sky.
All his brothers and sisters love him.
Pretty girls are everywhere.
He's very sensitive, but you can't tell. I know it, but he's a sensitive guy.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun.
He puts his family first all the time.
We're just seasons out of time. Goodbye, Papa, please pray for me.
Very happy when he would come. Yeah.
I was the black sheep of the family.
And he worked really hard. He's always been a hard worker.
Too much wine and too much song.
Now he's clever.
Got along. Goodbye, Papa, it's hard to die.
If you ask him a question, he always gives you the wrong answer.
Good provider.
I understood that he was making a huge sacrifice for our family.
All little things like that. It was always precious to me.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun, but the wine and the song.
He's the greatest guy in the whole world.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun.
But he had a very, very soft heart for anybody.
I guess Dad has always been my hero, even when I thought I didn't need a hero.
You gave me love and helped me find the sun.
He just doesn't stand for anything bad. He doesn't like injustice. He's just a really good, kind, sweet man, you know, really.
He was very compassionate, and he was very compassionate for us and for my family. And
I would think to myself, what would my dad do?
An honorable man.
Not only is he there for you, but he'll make whatever sacrifice he needs.
You know, and Dad's always laughing and joking and stuff. It's very rarely that I ever see Dad in a bad mood.
He always looked after me, and I always appreciated that.
He was, always there for me.
And Dad was always the one to help me out.
He's the kindest man you'd ever find. He is so kind. That's the best word I can use for him.